Good evening, everyone. Thank you very much for joining us tonight for the presentation of the 2023 Ottaway Award. I want to let you know that we're live streaming this event and the mic is sensitive, so they've asked us to keep background noise to a minimum for the benefit of the people who can't be here this evening. I'd like to start by thanking Jim Ottaway, the first chairman of the board of Words Without Borders, which is why we've dedicated this award in his name. And I would like to invite you all to, when you leave tonight, please take a copy of one of our honorees books home with you. There's enough for everyone to take one. I'd also like, before I start, to announce a special anniversary. Last month was the 20th anniversary of our editorial director, Susan Harris at Words Without Borders. Susan is dearly beloved in our community, and we're very grateful for 20 years with you, Susan. And now it is my great pleasure to introduce Esther Allen. Esther is a writer, professor, and translator of French language and Spanish language literature into English. She's on the faculties of Baruch College and the Graduate Center at CUNY. She co-founded with Salman Rushdie the PEN World Voices Festival in 2004 and worked with the PEN Haim Translation Fund grants from their inception, which she was a crucial part of, until 2010, from its inception in 2003. She's been a fellow at the Cullman Center for Scholars and Writers, a Guggenheim Fellow, a National Endowment for the Arts Translation Fellow twice, and is a Chevalier of the French Order of Arts and Letters. Translator of over 20 books, she is also the editor of 3 books I return to time and again, and which I highly recommend, particularly to the translators in the room. The first is In Translation, Translators and Their Work and What It Means, which she co-edited with Susan Bernofsky. The second is The Man Between, Michael Henry Haim and a Life in Translation, which was a tribute to Michael Haim, co-edited with Sean Cotter and Russell Scott Valentino. And the last is To Be Translated or Not to Be, commissioned by PEN International and the Institut Ramon Llull, and published in English, Catalan, and German for distribution at the 2007 Frankfurt Book Fair. Lastly, if you have a chance to speak with either Esther, Danny, or Susan after the remarks tonight, I invite you to ask them about their Sound of Music translation event in 2009. And with that, over to you, Esther.
All right, thank you so much, Sam. To present the Ottaway Award for the promotion of international literature to Daniel Hahn is a momentous and singular honor that I am very fortunate to have been granted. Dozens of people I know would have given quite a bit for this opportunity. And that, before we get into everything he's done for literature, translation, and all the rest of it, brings us immediately to the first and most important thing that there is to say about Danny. He is massively, immensely beloved. Most of you who come here to celebrate him probably already know that. But in case any of you were wondering why everyone loves Danny so much, I'd like to share a characteristic anecdote from Maureen Freely. There's nothing particularly exceptional about it, just Danny being Danny, but still, it explains a lot. Amanda Hopkinson and Danny and I, writes Maureen, were all on the board of the UK Society of Authors Translators Association back in 2009-2010, along with Roz Schwartz and Alexandra Buchler. There was talk and talk and talk about our having a presence at the London Book Fair, but LBF just couldn't see the points. Until just a month or two before the fair, Danny went along in his usual quiet way to the Gulbenkian Foundation, the British Council, and various other bodies, secured the necessary funding, and put together a schedule for 16 events. That was the year of the Icelandic volcano, Many, if not most, of those planning to attend the fair could not make it. We were pretty much the only act in town and had 600 attendees at our events. Of course, God loves translation, right? I say we, but of course it was Danny quietly managing most of it. All of us who know Danny have stories like this. He sees an opportunity, creates a network of support, and makes something transformative happen and continue happening. If you've been going to the London Book Fair over the past decade, you know that each year translation has a larger and more prominent place in its programming. That same year, 2010, Danny established the Emerging Translator Mentorship Program in the UK. It has now mentored more than 100 budding translators and inspired a similar program founded in the US 5 years later. With funds he received when he won the International Dublin Literary Prize, he founded the Translators Association First Translation Prize in 2017. And he's now working with Susan Bernofsky, myself, and a few others at the American Literary Translators Association to found one like it in the US. Next month, the South Asian Literature and Translation Project, which Danny and Jason Grunebaum spearheaded, will launch at the University of Chicago. These achievements, however, represent only a tiny subset of Danny's contributions. In fact, here I'm going to share my conspiracy theory. When you look at all that Daniel Hahn has done, only one hypothesis really makes sense. Danny must in fact be a set of identical quintuplets who have, in a brilliant, complex, lifelong hoax, succeeded in passing themselves off as a single person. Let's review the careers of these 5 wunderkinds. I initially thought triplets, but 3 people was not enough. First, there's activist Danny, who not only launches impactful new initiatives like the ones I've just been telling you about, but is also untiring in his service to existing organizations. He's judged numerous major literary awards and is the former chair of both the Society of Authors itself and its Translators Association. He's also served on literally dozens of boards and advisory councils, including those of Modern Poetry and Translation, English Pen, Shakespeare's Globe, and Human Rights Watch. Second, of course, is translator Danny. This highly accomplished Danny has translated close to 100 books, mainly fiction, from French, Spanish, and Portuguese. Books that have won the Independent Foreign Fiction Prize, the International Dublin Literary Award, have been shortlisted for the Man Booker International Prize and the LA Times Book Award. Quint number 2 has also been program director of the British Center for Literary Translation and teaches innumerable translation workshops each year with BCLT and other institutions. Third, and these are not in order of importance, is author and public intellectual Danny. This one has published dozens of articles and book reviews and seems to do about 50 or 60 public literary programs, podcasts, or radio shows each year, delivering lectures, participating in panels, interviewing other people, being interviewed himself. Author Danny has written a book on the 600-year history of the menagerie at the Tower of London, as well as biographies of Coleridge and Shelley. Did you know that? Did you know that Danny had written biographies of Coleridge and Shelley? His 2022 Catching Fire, which I see copies of it distributed around the room, which the New York Times described as smart and neurotic and funny and clear, is to the eternal gratitude of all of us who teach a wonderfully lucid hands-on account of the making of a literary translation. And the very good news about Quint number 3 is that he's currently at work on a forthcoming, hotly anticipated book titled If This Be Magic, about Shakespeare and the unlikely art of translation. Fourth and fifth are editor Danny and children's book Danny. These two have somewhat intertwined careers, since many of the books that Quint number 4 has edited, including the Oxford Companion to Children's Literature and the Ultimate Book Guide, a series of catalogs of books for kids of various ages that has won the Blue Peter Award, involve children's literature. But editor Danny has also co-edited the Oxford Guide to Literary Britain and Ireland. And meanwhile, children's book Danny has served on the boards of a number of schools, chairs the Children's Book Show, an annual program of in-school workshops with authors and illustrators, and works with the UK Literacy Association Book Awards, a children's book prize that is judged by teachers. You will not be surprised to learn that this Danny also advocates for the translation of children's literature. A recent Booker Prize study of the reception of translated literature in the UK had heartening news. Sales of translated fiction rose by 22% over the past year and now account for 3.3% of the country's overall fiction sales. The stats seem to foretell an even brighter future. 48% of translated fiction buyers are under the age of 34, making them significantly younger overall than readers of general fiction. Readers of translated fiction, or Generation TF, as the study calls them, also read more nonfiction, read more for information and knowledge, and are more likely to prefer reading books that challenge them. What does that have to do with Daniel Hahn? We certainly don't want to fall into some kind of great quintuplet theory of history here, and the Dannys themselves would probably be the first to object if we did. Still, the actions of one person or five do make a difference. Work is committed, long-standing, wide-ranging, and unstinting, as Danny Hahn's, has an effect. And I believe the Booker Prize survey gives us some clues as to what that effect has been. For Danny, the greatest prize of all would be to know that the initiatives he's founded and contributed to, the books and authors he's championed, are catalyzing a shift, a new openness in British literary culture and therefore in the culture of the English-speaking world. Our hosts tonight, Words Without Borders, have published a lot of work by Danny over the years, which I suggest all of you read, and have, of course, also been an enormously influential player in that ongoing shift towards Anglophone openness to the literary cultures of all languages. A couple of years ago, the late Queen Elizabeth II honored Daniel Hahn with the Order of the British Empire. It is gloriously fitting that this evening he receives from his longtime partners, allies, and friends at Words Without Borders, the Ottaway Award for the promotion of international literature, given to people who strive to transcend the boundaries that the old empires constricted us within. Now, and now I'd like to invite Jim Ottaway, WWB's first board chair, whose dedication to international literature inspired this award, to present the Ottaway Award to Daniel Hahn.
Danny, I think on the spur of the moment, we've decided that we're giving this to Danny, the translator.
I'll pass it on. On behalf of my siblings, that was fun, wasn't it? Thank you, Esther. I feel like those 7 minutes are going to keep my ego very well fed for quite a long time. I also can't believe at this point that I said to my parents, yeah, don't need to bother watching, it's fine. I think my parents might have enjoyed that. They would have liked you. I also, the person, or indeed people Esther has been describing, I mean, they sound great, don't they? That's also true. I'm slightly alarmed by that introduction for a number of reasons. One of those reasons, of course, is that there are so many other people who could be receiving this amazing award. And Esther herself is obviously one of them. I have checked and my name is already kind of engraved on this thing. Otherwise, I could at this point like, stage a little coup and give like a counter encomium, which I've been calling a eulogy all day. It's not a eulogy, it's an encomium. I have to get that right. Esther and I met at the Sound of Music thing, which you may not hear anything about this evening, in 2009. And even at that time, because she started in this business a while before me, she was already an example to me and to many of us of how translators might make their lives a dynamic and engaged thing, how we might ask questions about our situation, how we might be active and activist, thinking broadly about what a translator can be. It's very strange hearing my work described as Esther did, and it feels slightly dissociated somehow from me for a number of reasons. Though I sound very coherent somehow. All those 5, I mean, didn't feel coherent when I was doing any of that stuff, but yeah, it's very tidy. Yeah, just writing a biography. It's obviously, you can tell they've got that brain on. There's also, I was thinking about, there's that Wisława Szymborska poem some people know called Writing a Resume, which she sort of plays with the things that you do and don't include when you were doing that sort of official accounting of your life. You know, the achievements without the failures, and the concrete things without all the sort of all-pervading blurriness, which is mostly our experience of life, I think. However thoughtful and generous Esther's words were, I think there was one important thing which was downplayed, and I will come back to that. I was thinking this morning about, in a slightly sleep-deprived and jet-lagged way, so this may be a bit of a struggle, but we'll be all right. I was thinking this morning about things I might talk about this evening, and I was at a loss, partly because first of all, it's one of the other Quins who normally does these things, but also because when I speak in public, which I do quite a lot, I usually I usually kind of make it an excuse, almost regardless of the context, to proselytize, to advertise, to talk about the importance of translation and internationalism and cultural pluralism and cultural influence and speaking across borders. And I do that quite a lot, and I feel slightly, looking at the people who are in this room and being aware of some of the people who are watching online, that this is maybe not a company that needs to be persuaded of that. It's very nice to see you all. You will have heard already that Words Without Borders turns 20 this summer, which means that I have never worked in this business without its presence. As for so many translators, it's been my most constant online home, and like the thousands of writers it's published and the countless readers who have met those writers on their site, I'm hugely grateful to them for, I think, the visionary idea that it was 20-something years ago, but also for the extraordinary ways in which it has evolved over that time and the thing that it has become. My own working trajectory can sort of be mapped, I think, against my experiences with Words Without Borders. The next book I'm publishing, which is coming out with Archipelago next month, with Jill Schoolman, former winner of the Ottaway Award, I should say, Jill Schoolman. And actually the last book I published with Erica the end of last year are both writers who were published very early in our translations at Words Without Borders. I do about 100 public events a year, but the first one I ever did in this country, I think possibly still the only event I've ever done in New York, was programmed by Words Without Borders several years ago. Trying to do some sums, I can't do it. Many years ago, lots of years in plural. And actually now, having translated close to 100 books, it was actually after my second book only that I was first brought into the Words Without Borders fold. And actually, I should say the second book is quite late for Words Without Borders. You have, I think, the best record of any major publication I know for giving people their first paid professional gig. The word paid is very important in that sentence, by the way. And they're putting their rates up. This is amazing. This is very exciting. If you'd like to support them and therefore us. Like I was saying, when I was first invited to collaborate with Words Without Borders, with a commission that happened in error, actually, it was a very unfortunate, it turned out to be a very fortunate story, which I will not tell you today. It was with my second book, and I just at that time won the first prize I ever won in the translation world. And it was a prize that sort of gave me my career in those days. And it was a very fortunate thing, and I was very lucky, but there was one sort of downside to that experience, which was I was very new. I had never met another translator. It's very hard to imagine being in that point in a career at this point, not having that, but I'd never met another translator. And so I was this sort of rookie going to receive this award in a room full of absolute strangers, didn't know anybody there. It's very different, my experience now, I have to say, my experience today. And I say that because while I think it was that second book, the writer Iwanuza and the publisher Arcadia who kind of made me a translator, it was the community I kind of became entangled with afterwards that kept me here. Many of you, in fact, in this room, some people I know who are watching now. To some extent, what Esther said is technically true. Some of the facts, that is as far as I'm prepared to go. Some of those things that she said happened. I think the significance of my part in it is sometimes overstated. And I also think that the uncommonness of it is possibly overstated. The great majority of translators I know, including, again, many in this room and many watching, all do things for, as it were, for the greater good, for the common cause. We always sound slightly zealous when we use that kind of language, I know. People with different means, different possibilities of time or money or energy or attention. But those contributions, I think, are everywhere in the world in which we work. They're not always ostentatious, but I see them. And one of the ways I know this is because almost everything that I have done has been in collaboration with, again, some of you, in this very collegial endeavor in which I find myself, me and my four fellow Quins, and also some other people. We all know, I think, that translation is inevitably a collaborative practice, writing, but it's writing in company. And those engagements with the writers, but also with editors and publicists and critics and many other people involved, all the way to our readers, are how I've learned the things I've learned. It's one of the reasons I've always preached the virtues of co-translation. It's also why I like working very closely with my authors, except one time. And also why most of my favorite translators really love being edited, also except, yeah. But that also means that part of my, that almost every part of my resume could, with apologies to Esther Allen and to Wisława Szymborska, be described in a narrative that didn't have me at the center of it. I do often get to take quite a lot of credit. But every individual thing to which people put my name could be the story of, first of all, the giants whose shoulders we stand on, who are maybe campaigners who sort of, over many generations, sort of, you know, loosened the ketchup bottle and we kind of came along and popped the top off. I'm now pandering to, I'm in America, and so I'm now translating, absolutely pandering to the fact that my audience is, you know, ketchup and stuff. You guys know about ketchup and stuff. It could also be the story of the many friends who, like me, and alongside me, do this work, do all the work every day. When Kate Griffin and I were doing a job share at BCRT, Susan will remember this, we used to joke that the most efficient division of labor would be for Kate to do the actual work and for me to talk about it. I think it was a joke. In short, a lot of the work done by other people is hidden behind the work of the one middle-aged white guy Esther was saying nice things about. She mentioned some of the names, but all the projects that she mentioned, one way or another, have other people involved in them. I was scribbling while Esther was talking. I should mention Sarah and Kat and Jason Dipakaranava, you mentioned, and Paula and Antonia and Sean and many, many other names. I've been lucky to work with a lot of people who started before me and from whom I have learned, and to work with those who are new to this business and to learn from them also. Last night, a few of us had dinner at Esther's, and right beforehand, she and I were talking about the scheme that she mentioned to bring a new prize, which we hope will be announced later this year, which was a continuation of a conversation that began at a dinner, another dinner at Susan Winofsky's earlier this year. I will be, I think, Karen and I having lunch tomorrow, and there will probably be more scheming, I think, different scheming, like Greek scheming, sometimes various kinds of things. And I feel like it might seem that mostly I'm in this profession for the food and the scheming. And that is true, actually. I don't know whether everyone loves to just talk about their work, but I definitely am someone who does. Rather to the misfortune of the Uber driver I had to bring me to Heathrow a couple of days ago, who poor guy was just trying to merge onto the M4, and there was someone sitting behind him going, but of course what you have to understand is it's not possible for like one word in one language to map perfectly into a word in another language. If he is watching, his name was Alan, if you're watching. Sorry, not sorry. And it's certainly the case that while I like translating, I often enjoy being a translator more than that. I know honestly that I'm better at being a translator sometimes than translating. And I draw that distinction, particularly when I'm talking to early career translators about the job, translating rather, being that thing of, you know, remaking an old text anew by replacing these words with those words. Being a translator is more about being a citizen in this community. It's the advocacy and the peer development and the public programming and the demystifying and the budgeting and the proselytizing. It's promoting and lobbying and fundraising and training new talent and scheming at people's apartments over cups of coffee. So like I said, yes, an inherently collegial profession when it is at its best, and a profession that is serious, I think, mostly when it is at its best, about solidarity. Not, I think, always, and that solidarity is not always as evenly distributed as it might be, but I think more often than not, and I think getting quickly better. It's a community, translators and all those who sail with them, that is evolving, and an evolution that I think is nuanced and complex, and that requires thoughtfulness, and it requires intention. It's also worth noting that for translators, trying to do something that everyone else assumed was going to be really simple and is actually nuanced and complex is what tickers do best, as they say in the blue. That's a range of cultural references there. And I am, in the light of that, very proud of some of the things that we have done, some of the things that I have done. There are others I'm less proud of, and I'm not going to dwell on them for very long, because I should be basking in the things that Esther said about how very cool I am. But I should say that when I look back, the moments in my working life that give me pause are not to do with translating. They're not thinking about a job that was maybe not well enough done, or an actual concrete mistake. Imagine, it's the very thought. Yeah, whatever. It's those cases where I think I wasn't as good a citizen as I might have been to the community. They're the moments where I made an early working choice without real deliberateness behind it, where I took a job without checking if somebody else maybe wanted to do it, where I maybe took a little bit too long to realize what other people needed. Sometimes what they needed is for people like me to step out of their way. I think when we're at our best, those of us with privilege in this profession, and indeed those of us with privilege not in this profession, use that privilege to enable and to mitigate some of those barriers to entry, and to celebrate what we think should be celebrated, and to create and extend opportunities. That work also is a privilege, I think, in the way we used to use it more often. It might be a duty, in a way, incumbent on those of us who can, but it also feels like something we're very lucky to be able to do. To me, no other part of this job is as rewarding. Which is why being recognized for that work particularly means a huge amount to me. So thank you on behalf of the 5 of us, who I know will be watching from home. Thank you to the trustees who selected me from so many strong nominations. I know there are a lot of strong nominations because I am constantly nominating people on Thursday. Not myself, that would be weird, but other people. I think possibly this is just their way of shutting me up. Just give him the thing. I love it. Yeah. Thank you to Mr. Ottaway himself for presenting this and for letting his name raise this award. Thank you to Words Without Borders for everything you have done for me, for us, for all of us. And thank you to Esther, of course, for tonight, for the things that you said, for the things that you tactfully did not mention. We share some heady days in Havana in the 1950s that we don't want to talk about. Thank you for your leadership in our community and your friendship to so many of us. I think those two things are very intertwined, actually, in lots of ways. These prizes always feel like the celebration of a community, not just the values of a community, but also us here and our work. So many in this business, several in this room, many I know watching back home, have done a lot of work that is concealed behind mine, and tonight concealed behind me. Which is not to say that I'm not great, because I mean, obviously I am, but so are you. Thank you all very much.
That's it. Enjoy the rest of the.